So, you're probably watching The Witcher on Netflix and need more Witcher content in your life. Well, we here at Key Issues are here to satiate your hunger. We will be covering the entire Netflix series, plus giving you a lot of context from the novels that the show may have left out for the series. So, to stay up to date with all of that, be sure to subscribe. Geralt of Rivia is the main protagonist of the Witcher saga, as well as the Witcher trilogy of video games that take place after the book's end. Oddly enough, not much of anything is known about Geralt during the time before he left Kaer Morhen, but I will provide everything that we know about the White Wolf's early life. Because the first two novels are segmented into short stories that don't really follow a singular narrative, this video may seem a bit disjointed, but just know that most of Geralt's early life is detailed through these short stories, and these stories were adapted into the first season of the show, but a lot of detail was left out of these stories in each episode, so I'm here to provide some more context, as well as the origin for Geralt. Many of these stories are fairly inconsequential that we see in the book, so I'll try to hit the highlights as did the show, even though most of the highlights could be entire videos themselves. This video may contain spoilers for the series because it will be following the books fairly closely, so if you want no spoilers for the first season and potential future seasons, you have been warned. As I said, not much is known about Geralt's childhood, and despite being called Geralt of Rivia, he doesn't actually hail from that city. In fact, we have no idea where Geralt was born, but we know it wasn't Rivia. However, we do have an idea of who he was born to. Long before he was the White Wolf, his mother Vicenna, a druid, met a man named Corin, a mighty warrior and the presumed father of Geralt. The two worked together to slay a savage Koschei, and it is widely believed that the two became close enough to conceive a child. Shortly after being born, Geralt was left at Kaer Morhen to study in the School of the Wolf to become a monster slayer. Geralt was put through years of rigorous training to obtain the legendary skill he was known for, and even survived the Trial of the Grasses. This trial is an incredibly painful and deadly process that very few even survive. It was rumored that only 30% of the children who undergo the trial survive it, and for those who do not, it is a very slow and agonizing death. Of course, Geralt did endure the trial, which granted him superhuman abilities and the curse of becoming a Witcher, hated and feared by the rest of the world. Because of Geralt's exceptional talent and fortitude displayed during the Trial of Grasses, he was deemed a successful subject for additional mutations to enhance his Witcher abilities even further, and give him his distinct white hair that Witchers do not typically have. The comics give more information on Geralt's time as a Witcher in training at Kaer Morhen, but because those events are not canon, I won't spend time recounting all of that here, but it may be a video for another time. Having survived his trials, mutations, and extensive training, Geralt finally graduated from the School of the Wolf and abandoned Kaer Morhen to serve the people as a Witcher. From this point, Geralt travels the world with his trusty steed Roach, solving mysteries, slaying monsters, and helping old ladies find their pans. One such adventure, he would run into his soon-to-be best friend, the famous poet Dandelion. The two met at a celebration in the town of Gullet in Aedirn. Apparently, Dandelion had impregnated a young woman who lived in the town, and of course, her very large and intimidating older brothers weren't too happy to hear the news. Fearing for his life, Dandelion fled, and eventually bumped into Geralt, who assisted the minstrel with his escape, and the two became fast friends, and as Geralt puts it, opposites attract.
Drop your sword, scoundrel! This is your first and last warning!
Dandelion!
'Tis I, though the scum of the city call me the Crimson Avenger.
Sometime after this, while still remaining close friends, the two had gone their separate ways, and if you're a fan of the games, you undoubtedly have heard that Geralt has a somewhat unsavory but very badass name, the Butcher of Blacken. While many fear Geralt in part because of this moniker, it is never properly explained during the video game trilogy, and it's kind of glossed over during the first episode of the show. There are two main players in the tragedy of Blacken, Stregobor and Renfri. Stregobor was a powerful mage who wanted Geralt to murder Renfri. Renfri was an infamous bandit leader staying in Blacken to kill Stregobor. Of course, not being a mercenary in this type of work going against the Witcher's code, Geralt refused. Eventually, Geralt met Renfri, who told him that she was a princess that Stregobor had exiled from the kingdom of Creighton because she was born on an eclipse. She pleaded with Geralt to help her kill the sorcerer, but Geralt refused her as well. The next day, Geralt learned of Renfri and her bandits' plan to hold the town hostage with a Tritum ultimatum, which, within the Witcher universe, is when an individual holds a group of hostages and then threatens to kill each one until their demands are met. Not wanting innocents to be killed over the squabble between Renfri and Stregobor, Geralt took action before the hostages were even taken, killing all of Renfri's bandits and eventually Renfri herself in a bloodbath for all to see. Without any context, and without knowing that they were all about to be killed off, the townsfolk saw Geralt as a monster and drove him out of Blaviken, never to return. The story of the White Wolf who caused so much bloodshed spread like wildfire, and the name the Butcher of Blaviken stuck with Geralt ever since.
How do you know Yennefer?
What a question. Master Dandelion's ballads, of course. The only way a humble merchant might hope to rub up against greatness. Unless, that is, he's as lucky as I am.
And runs into a very patient witcher.
It's a Geralt of Rivia himself. The Butcher of Blacken.
Following these events, Geralt eventually found himself in Cintra during the princess's 15th birthday, where his skills were requested by Calanth, the queen, and unlike in the show, Dandelion didn't really have anything to do with this story. Calanth had hired Geralt for reasons unknown to the Witcher at the time, and while he repeatedly told her he wasn't a sellsword, he did attend the birthday celebration to hear the queen out. At this celebration, Calanth wanted to find a suitor from Skellige for her daughter Pavetta, so Cintra and Skellige could unite their kingdoms. So she hired Geralt to deal with an unsavory figure who may interfere with the matchmaking. This figure was a man by the name of Duny, and he did eventually arrive to spoil the queen's fun. Duny came to claim Pavetta through the law of surprise. This law dictates that a man saved by another is expected to offer his savior a boon whose nature is unknown to one or both parties. In very, very rare cases, this boon takes the form of the saved man's firstborn child, conceived or born without the father's knowledge. Duny had come across the late king 15 years prior and saved his life, and on the king's daughter's 15th birthday, he came to claim his reward. During these events, Calanth tricks Duny into removing his helmet before the stroke of midnight, revealing that he was a monster. Despite this form, Pavetta wished to still be with Duny. As it turned out, they had secretly been together for a year. After this revelation, the banquet hall erupted into violence. The other would-be kings attacked Duny, and Pavetta channeled the ancient magic power she was born with, causing the castle itself to nearly collapse, and the entire celebration turned into chaos. Geralt, thinking fast, sprung into action, and with the help of an old mage, Mousesack, calmed Pavetta and saved Duny's life. After the guests began to calm down, midnight struck and Duny regained his human form and revealed himself as a prince and son of Akerspark, who had been cursed to look like a beast each day until midnight. After seeing Duny's true form and learning of his true name, Emhyr, Calanth finally gave her approval for Pavetta to marry him, and Emhyr's curse was lifted. For saving his life, Emhyr offered Geralt a reward as is custom, and sensing that Pavetta was already pregnant, Geralt claimed the child by invoking the same law of surprise that Emhyr had used on the king 15 years prior. The couple would go on to name this child Cirilla, or as she's better known, Ciri.
You weren't a good father. Ciri saw you as a threat. Even if she'd asked me to tell you something, I doubt you'd have liked to hear those words.
Understood.
If there's nothing else.
There is, but you may go. Witcher, I do not wish to see you ever again.
And before we wrap up this video, I would like to quickly go over one more event in Geralt's early life, how he met Yennefer of Vengerberg, and I'll cover this in more detail during our Yennefer video, but here are the Cliff Notes. One day, Geralt and Dandelion were out fishing and attempting to reel in a 12-foot catfish when the line snapped. Disappointed at missing out on this monster fish, they pulled in the other lines and decided to head out. While pulling in another line, Dandelion felt something on the other end, which just so happened to be a strange-looking jar that Dandelion was sure would contain a genie. Geralt, realizing that it may be dangerous, struggled with Dandelion to pry the jar away from his friend, and during their scuffle, a djinn suddenly appeared before them. Dandelion immediately began making wishes without a second thought, which did nothing but anger the mystical creature, who then attacked Dandelion. However, Geralt managed to chase it off by using an ancient exorcism that he was taught during his travels. While the djinn fled, Dandelion was left critically injured. Geralt raced on his horse for hours to get Dandelion help and eventually came across Rind, but the pair was not permitted to enter until dawn, so they were left to wait with all of the others who also wished to enter the city. The three that were also waiting offered their help, but quickly realized that Dandelion's injuries were magical and could not be mended with herbs. They then told Geralt that there was a sorceress taking asylum in the town who may be able to help. While sorcerers, witches, mages, etc. were not permitted to stay in Redania, this sorceress was staying with a nobleman from Novigrad who was protecting her. Geralt, not wanting to waste any time after dawn had broken, entered the town, knocked out the guard protecting the house that the sorceress was staying in, and inside found the nobleman in a drunken stupor. The nobleman told Geralt to take apple juice with him to the sorceress who had requested it. Not wanting to miss his chance to meet with her, he took the juice up into her room. Of course, this sorceress was Yennefer of Vengerberg. The two spoke, and eventually Yennefer agreed to heal Dandelion, and after healing the poet completely, Yennefer put a spell on Geralt, took the seal that Geralt had used to drive the djinn away, and Geralt blacked out. The next day, Geralt woke in a prison cell and found out that Yennefer had put a mind-controlling spell on him and used the Witcher to exact revenge on those who spoke out against Yennefer by embarrassing all of them publicly. Eventually, Geralt was brought to explain his crimes to the mayor, and it was at this time that Yennefer summoned the djinn, hoping to capture it, as any sorcerer with a genie can become more powerful than any standard mage. Seeing that the djinn was not going to be tamed easily, Geralt wanted to help Yennefer, and because the djinn was destroying the town in a rage, he was allowed to do so. Eventually, realizing that Geralt was the master of the genie, he was forced to make a wish so the monster would stop its rage. And Geralt wished that he and Yennefer's fates be tied together, which forced the djinn to flee and leave Yennefer alive. Again, this story is super complicated, and it will be fully covered in Yennefer's video, as it wasn't entirely covered in the show either. But I wanted to give you guys some explanation for one of Geralt's most important early stories.
Jinn might have cheated us after all.
Why?
Because I don't feel that anything's changed either. I love you, Yen.
And I love you.
And that's pretty much it for Geralt's origin and his quote-unquote early life. These are all the most infamous stories of Geralt throughout the first two books, so I definitely wanted to cover those in more detail than the show did for you guys. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave them below, and any recommendations or suggestions for videos that you'd like to see on The Witcher in the future, be sure to comment those as well. If you'd like to support the channel, always be sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to support the channel directly, you can consider becoming a member. Be sure to follow us on all the social media that you see on screen, and with that being said, remember the motto, it's Geralt of Rivia over everything, and I'll see you guys next time.